Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, an Army general ends his career in the military with a unique final gesture. Find out how he took his concluding steps in uniform. Also, the state of Joint All-Domain Command and Control, an analysis of the near future for the overarching capability. Plus, we've got more from our limited series on one of the most dangerous jobs in the Vietnam War, hunting for opposing units behind enemy lines. Hear about how elite troops adapted to the jungle. And Disney makes some special deliveries to Fisher House locations as the company recommits to supporting military families. It's the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. Major General William Zanna had a long and fruitful Army career. The now veteran, who served for 37 years, finished out his time in service as the Director of Strategic Plans and Policy and International Affairs for the National Guard Bureau. But it was one of his first assignments as a sentinel at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier that stuck with him the longest. As he approached his final day in the Army before retirement, Zanna was granted special permission to conclude his career in a unique way by walking the steps of the Tomb Guardians one more time. As the final 2 hours of his time in uniform wound down on May 31st, Zanna performed the hallowed duty, guarding the tomb from 10 p.m. until midnight, when his time in service officially ended. It was a meaningful experience for the longtime soldier, who spoke about it in a recent interview provided by the Army. Have a look.
I reported the Old Guard in 1987 as Private Zanna. I was in E Company doing firing parties. I came down with some friends to visit the Tomb of the Unknowns in one of the first weekends down here, so fall of '87. For me, it was remarkable to be a witness to something that was this reverence within hallowed ground. So it was the hallowed ground of the cemetery and the reverence that was being observed by our country to have sentinels and this continuous guard. And so definitely piqued my interest and curiosity. Seeing the degree of training, the degree of precision that the soldiers demonstrated, it became something that was kind of in the back of my mind, seeds that were planted there. And after 2 years in the Old Guard, I was an E5 when I reported in as a new guy down here at the tomb on the first relief, and that would have been in May of 1989. So the Tomb of the Unknowns in Arlington Cemetery has meant something different to me at different parts of my career, and it's really evolved. When I was first here in '87, it was the awe of all that was Washington, D.C., all that was Arlington Cemetery, the newness of still being in the military. Over years, especially after combat deployments, coming back and visiting Arlington Cemetery, having friends and loved ones. I have a former spouse who's buried here, I have many friends. And over time, when you come back and you're visiting the Tomb of the Unknowns, your impression evolves. The connection to this sense of sacrifice and being able to be a small part of it, to be able to connect over history to the people that you see coming in and out, humbling, and it keeps you very grounded. At every rank level, I've come back and visited both the tomb and then just visiting friends and family here in the cemetery. It's always a touchstone to come back and to connect back with the roots. So for me, being afforded the honor and the privilege of coming back and having one last guard shift to be able to say my thanks to the unknowns for their inspiration, for their sacrifice. Really a sense of this being full circle. Driving on to Fort Myer was surreal today. The number of funerals that I've done at the Old Post Chapel, that's really profound. And so all of this starts coming rushing back. There are pieces of things that you don't really think about. You don't think about every day, but when you come back into the space, being around the tomb guards who are here now and just seeing their routine, it takes me back to 1989 or 1990, 1991. A sense of great appreciation for what they continue to do, for what the Old Guard continues to do in terms of the burials here in the cemetery, the reverence with which that is accomplished. When I thought about coming back down and visiting the Tomb of the Unknowns before leaving service, ideally I'd come back and I'd take a guard shift. I would get back up to speed, be fully trained. That ship has sailed in a good way. You've got soldiers down here doing a great job. I couldn't hold to that standard now. I'm sure I couldn't be as sharp as they are, but there's a part of that. I'll remember the sequence when everything else has gone out of my head. I'll remember the change sequence. I said it when I went downstairs. I have dreams of still being at the Tomb of the Unknowns, and it's like quarter till, and I'm running to get my stuff together. And I will have these dreams probably till my last days. So this sense of it staying with you, it stays with you deeply.
Next up, from the recent C4ISRnet conference, an update on the state of JADC2, the military's overarching communications and decision-making capability. Joint all-domain command and control has been an evolving goal for the Pentagon for years. But where does the effort stand now? C4ISRnet reporter Courtney Albin spoke with two experts in our recent webcast. Here's part of their conversation.
I thought maybe we could start out, and Brian, let's go to you first on this. How have you seen DoD's CJADC2 strategy evolve since it was first introduced? And what progress would you say the department has made as it pursues that?
Yeah, Courtney. So I think the department started out with this idea of JADC2 being all sensors, all shooters, all commanders being able to interact with each other and be able to combine into kill chains sort of at will. It was sort of this very ambitious vision for being able to achieve interoperability across most elements of the force. And obviously that was a little bit probably too ambitious for what the technology and our requirements and acquisition process can entail or can achieve. And over time, what we've done is realize that maybe instead of a top-down approach where we define the level of interoperability that's needed and come up with standards across the entire force that drive that, we've come up with a much more bottom-up approach, I would argue, in terms of coming up with the kill chains, the systems of systems, the force combinations that are most important for addressing particular operational problems, or in terms of best combining the existing forces we have. That bottom-up approach has started to yield some real benefits, and I think Mark can certainly talk about some of the work that for example, Project Convergence has been able to do in terms of these bottom-up configurations of forces and achieving interoperability between them. I think the guide experiments that CDAO has been doing between combatant commanders and in terms of developing the Joint Fires Network, I think those are all examples of coming up with particular instantiations of the force that are needed to solve a particular operational problem. But I think by building it up from the bottom up to a larger aggregation, we're going to see a more success with JADC2 going forward than we have in its first couple of years.
Great, Mark. Yeah, how would you answer that question? How have you seen JADC2 evolve, and would you agree about about this bottoms up approach?
No, I really would, and I Brian's answer resonated with me in terms of the original ambition of JADC2, and as the PEO C3T, right, my job for the Army is to build the Army's network, and so some of the ambition when applied to the network was staggering, right? And so I think this I certainly agree with this bottom-up approach, and I think Brian talked about capstone and guide. Now, I would also argue that, especially in Indo-PACOM, it was sort of what are the sensor-to-shooter threads that we want to execute, that are feasible to execute. And so working with Admiral Kano and Brigadier General Kropsky, my counterpart PEOs, kind of building sort of those sensor-to-shooter threads that can get to like sort of tangible outcomes. I think we learned a few things. One thing we learned is, all of us are living in sort of this data-centric environment, and interoperability is not something we can sort of assume away when we get into that data-centric environment. And so conducting experiments like Project Convergence Capstone 4, where we were integrating with the Navy directly, where we were taking 18th Airborne Corps and integrating their actual components and kit and developing those sort of kill chains and threads, we were achieving, real, no kidding integration of our data environments. And where then can we shape investments to achieve sort of this data-centric environment that will get after this sensor-to-shooter architecture that CJADC2 sort of it has sort of ambition towards.
When we return, the latest from our new limited series. Hear from Vietnam veterans with one of the most dangerous jobs in the military. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. The Vietnam War was a crucible of combat set in the most daunting of environments. The jungle was an intimidating place to fight. Thick bush, limited visibility, strange noises, and the danger that could be just feet away at any time. All of those were features of the battle space. Operating behind enemy lines for up to a week, the men of Vietnam's long-range reconnaissance patrols went to extreme lengths to stay hidden from the enemy. From our series, Shadows in the Jungle, learn about what they had to do to fight, conceal themselves, and survive in the jungle.
The jungle would be very beautiful if you didn't have the threat of people shooting at you. It was very serene. At night, when you were encamped, things growing around you would glow in the dark, and you had to be very careful of leeches and snakes that wanted to crawl in with you. But other than that, it was really nice and beautiful.
We're always in the jungle there, and the Central Highlands is very tenacious terrain and double and triple canopy and mountainous and lots of critters and stuff like that.
Rice paddies, canopy jungle, anything you wanted. But our terrain area could be anywhere from a triple canopy jungle to banana plantation that you'd work through, depending on which part of the area AO you went to.
We would go through the jungle, try to avoid trails if possible, but walking on the trails were not forbidden. You just had to watch out for the booby traps.
On a humid day, you get that aroma that tells you it's steamy, a lot of different smells that you can't identify. Some days could choke you off with the fact because it was so intense.
You had rock apes out there. If you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. If you screw with them, they'll come down and beat the living daylights out of you. There's also wild cats there. We had one that circled us at night. Never heard a footstep, but you could hear this, huh, huh. And it was like, wait a minute, it was just over there, now it's over here. How to get from there to there.
We were aware of what's going on around us, and at nighttime, you have Mother Nature as your alarm. The crickets, the bugs, they tell you, if something's out there, if they shut up, your alarm just went off. Somebody's there. Might be an ape, might be a monkey, might be a tiger, might be an enemy, might be a snake. If you have any kind of movement, you wake the rest of the team up. You go on high alert. Hunker down. Just wait and see what's going to happen.
If it was raining, you'd get that musty smell. If the bad guys were coming down a trail, you could smell them. You got to where you could just smell what they had for lunch.
One of the things that we did was almost everyone in the team had their own bottle of Tabasco sauce. We would put that in our food a lot. It would come out of our pores, and the smell was very distinctive. The Vietnamese had something similar that they used called num nut sauce, and it would come out of their pores, and they smelled very similar. Sometimes we would even eat the Vietnamese rations, fish heads and rice, so that our diet would be the same as theirs. If they did smell us out in the jungle, they would think it was one of their own teams out on a patrol.
That's why the way we did things, like for instance, the straight leg infantry, they carried bug spray. Couldn't do that. You couldn't carry that stuff with us. You just had to get bit, you know, because that all gave off an aroma. Back in that daytime, a lot of people smoked. Can't smoke. You have to kind of change your habits when you go out there.
Some of us made ourselves Ho Chi Minh sandals that we would wear over our boots. You take an old tire and you cut out a foot pattern, and you take an inner tube and you make straps for it, and you wear them over your boots. The Vietnamese wore them all the time. So when we would walk on a trail, we'd leave footprints that looked like B.F. Goodrich had been there. That was the same as their footprints.
Normally, we would carry four quarts of water on a mission. And there were times, depending on the terrain, where we also carried a gallon in the collapsible canteen in our rucksack, which added a lot of weight. But if you did a flyover to an area you were going to go into and you didn't spot any streams or anything, it either had to be a short mission, or you had to hope you found water someplace, or you carried it in. You know, they didn't airdrop anything to you. You had to live off the land.
And I remember they said, okay, we're going to bed down here. Well, you just lay there. And of course, the monsoons, you're laying in water, and there's leeches on you. When a monsoon season hits you, you've never seen rain like that. You think you've seen rain, but the monsoon season is unbelievable amount of rain.
The biggest problem during the monsoon was they could get you in. There was no guarantee they could get you out in the next month. So you either had to walk out or hope for a break in the clouds where you couldn't prepare for it. If you took food for 3 days and were out there for 7, you had a problem.
And I remember laying there and shaking and shivering and thinking, what did I get myself into?
Check out all available episodes of Shadows in the Jungle on the Military Times YouTube channel. When we come back, our personal finance expert returns with tips on refinancing your auto loan. Welcome back. On this edition of Money Minute, personal finance expert Jeanette Mack talks you through the basics of auto loan refinancing. Check it out.
According to Experian, the average new car payment is over $700 a month, an increase of about $100 over the last year. So making your car payment more affordable can be one of the best ways to put breathing room back in your budget. And some financial institutions even offer a cash bonus for your efforts. Even if you just got the car, you should still look at a refi, because early in the loan is when you're paying the most in interest. If you don't have to pay a prepayment penalty from your current lender, and you can get a rate at least 1% lower than your current rate, refinancing is a go. Try to find a lender that doesn't charge application fees to be cost effective, and try to keep the new loan term the same as the term on your existing loan. This way you'll maximize your savings. By extending the term on your loan, you could end up paying more in interest over the life of the loan. Refinancing is meant to put you in a better spot than you're currently in. So talk to a trusted lender to check your options. Refinancing your auto loan could put you and your budget back on Easy Street.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more coverage of military and defense topics, open the bomb bay doors and look down at militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more headlines. And to become the smartest seal in the zodiac, sign up for our early bird brief, compiled each morning to bring you the most recent headlines. Lastly, if social media is where you find open source intelligence, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. And until the government shuts it down, we're on TikTok, so go find us there as well. When we come back, the Walt Disney Company surprises military families with some gifts and special guests. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. The Fisher House Foundation is a long-standing institution built to aid the families of service members if they need assistance while their loved one needs medical care. If a service member has to go into a military hospital and their family needs somewhere to stay, Fisher House is there to provide. Recently, a supporter of the foundation, the Walt Disney Company, made a donation to keep Fisher House and its 97 locations running strong, and decided to mark the event with some special giveaways. Volunteers, along with the cast members from Disney, visited Fisher House locations around the country to drop off special care packages to the people staying there. Here's a look at how it all went down.
Well, we're doing two things to support the families at Fisher House. First of all, we're giving a monetary grant. But secondly, given our purpose at Disney Consumer Products is to create happiness every day, we're also giving Disney-branded care packages to the families staying at Fisher House.
You know, too often Fisher House is a best-kept secret, but we work to improve the quality of life of our military and veterans families. At the heart of our program is a network of now 97 Fisher Houses that provide a home away from home for both military and veterans families while they're receiving the necessary medical care. Today, to be able to have this experience with Disney coming to our house, it's a special day.
We would be homeless without this place for 8 months. So it's made going to Walter Reed super easy, not having to worry about commuting every day. Today was great. It's so wonderful to have the children in the house smiling and happy and having some joy when usually they're bored and trying to stay quiet for everybody. So today was absolutely magical.
Coming over today was a real treat to be able to have the great food and see the Disney inspiration and see what Disney's doing for Fisher House. I met Donald Duck today, oh yes, and got a hug and got pictures to take to my granddaughters, great-granddaughters.
So we're extremely happy about this and glad to continue just our great relationship with Disney, and also glad that this is going on to all of the Fisher Houses in the country, not just us, but it started with us. We're having a wonderful blessing from Disney today, a donation to help us out here at our Fisher House in Orlando. The Orlando Fisher House has had a great relationship with Disney since 2018, and this is just one more step in that. Very nice. Yeah.
And that's all we have time for in this week's episode. We'll see you next week on Defense News Weekly.